Hey guys, it's Abby. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be covering the case of the murder in Starcourt Mall. However, this mall is not actually called Starcourt Mall. It is called Gwinnett Place Mall, located in Georgia. It was also the setting for Stranger Things Season 3. This is the mall that they rented out to film the show in, and filming actually took place just a few months after the murder occurred. I stumbled across this case a few days ago when I was researching the locations that Stranger Things has filmed at, and I knew I absolutely had to cover it right away, given my interest in Stranger Things has been piqued by the release of Season 4. So if you are a big fan of Stranger Things and true crime, this video is for you. Now, this case was not easy to put together. There was a definite lack of information out there, and I had to really dig deep into different news reports to kind of put all the pieces together. And at the beginning of this video, I am going to cover a little bit of history of the mall because it does kind of coincide with how the murder eventually occurred. But if you don't want to learn about the history of the mall, I'm going to leave a timestamp down below for when the actual case itself starts. Real quick before we get into the video, if you like this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe so you can check out my other videos when I upload. I post on Fridays at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I also have a case suggestion form linked down below. It is a really quick few question Google form where you can suggest any cases you want me to cover in the future. And with that being said, let's get on into the video. Gwinnett Place Mall opened in 1984 and is located in Duluth, Georgia, which is about a 30-minute drive from Atlanta. The mall initially had a very successful start, and for almost 2 decades, the mall was constantly packed with shoppers coming from all over the place, all over Georgia and even the surrounding states. It was such a popular place to go. The mall was actually so successful that 2 years after it opened, they expanded and remodeled to add a 4th wing and anchor store to the mall, and in 1993 remodeled yet again to add a 5th. In 1999, the Mall of Georgia opened up about 20 minutes away from Gwinnett Place Mall, and this would be the beginning of the end. The Mall of Georgia was significantly bigger, making it the biggest mall in Georgia, and had a large range of high-end stores which drew people away from Gwinnett Place Mall and into the Mall of Georgia. Coincidentally, as more people began being drawn away from Gwinnett Place Mall, the area around it significantly changed. There was an increase in crime, such as drugs, gangs, and even prostitution, and that deterred people from going there even more because it was just not really safe to be around there. Because of this, the mall began losing countless stores and more vacancies began opening up. At this point, it was described as essentially a ghost town. By 2017, shortly before the murder occurred, the vast majority of stores had closed down, the food court was completely vacant, regular maintenance had ceased, causing leaks in the ceilings and things to start falling apart. Fixtures such as fountains and elevators were permanently shut off. And another important thing to note was around this time, the security cameras were also shut off. As of April of this year, the mall was officially bought out and closed down, and now they are working on plans to revitalize the building. Around March of 2018, Stranger Things leased out a completely vacant wing of the mall, including the food court, and began transforming it into an 80s style mall for the taping of Season 3. As I'm sure you can imagine, this was kind of like a daunting task. I mean, they literally transformed an entire wing of the mall back into the 80s. Although I do have to say, it looks very cool, and if all malls looked like that, I would be there every day. They changed the Beauty Master anchor store into a JCPenney's on the 1st floor and a movie theater entrance on the 2nd floor. And they even changed an exterior entrance to the mall to read Starcourt Mall. However, for some reason, this was not the entrance of the wing that they leased out. I'm assuming because from pictures, it looks like this was just a much cooler entrance than the one that they were using. The entrance to Starcourt Mall didn't actually go into Starcourt Mall. By mid-May 2018, after recarpeting, repainting, and essentially redesigning that entire wing of the mall, filming finally began. Finn Wolfhard actually said in an interview with Jimmy Fallon, and I quote, "It felt a little haunted. Every time we'd be in there, it would be fun, and then we just look at each other like, there's something wrong with this mall." I'm honestly curious to know if the cast and crew knew what had happened there a few months prior. I feel like there had to be at least a few of them that knew about it, but either way, it's safe to say that there was definitely something off about the mall. Now, this incident that I'm talking about is the murder of 19-year-old Silling man on November 30th, 2017, which happened just 4 months before they agreed to lease out that mall for the show. Silling man was a sophomore at Georgia State University studying psychology, and she was just about to finish up her fall semester, but for some reason had not registered for her spring semester yet. Since high school, she lived with her uncle Savon Yang in Lawrenceville, Georgia, and around August of 2017, she began dating Emmett Davis Jr., who was well known to have anger issues and a short temper. Emmett was an incredibly controlling boyfriend. He would force her to dress exactly like him, and even insisted that she get a face tattoo to match his, which we will get into a little bit later. On October 8th, 2017, Silling left home, and her family filed a missing persons report for her, but she returned back home shortly after before the police actually opened the case. And then on October 10th, she left home again. Now, I've seen a lot of back and forth reports on this. Some sites say that her family didn't file a missing persons report the second time. Other sites say that they did, so I'm not quite clear on whether or not they did or not. Honestly, it was kind of split 50-50 between what I found out, but they may or may not have filed a missing persons report. I don't believe that they did, considering when she was found, it took them a while to figure out who she was, but that's just kind of my take on it. Again, don't know which one is actually true. After Silling left home, her and her boyfriend Emmett lived in various hotels surrounding the Gwinnett Place Mall. A manager at one of these hotels actually noticed that Silling had severe bruising around one of her eyes and called the police, but when they showed up, she refused to talk to them. On November 15th, 2017, Emmett took Silling to a tattoo shop and forced her to get a tattoo on her face matching his. The tattoo artist working at the shop that day reported that they came in wearing identical outfits and aviator sunglasses. The artist was very hesitant to give Silling this tattoo because it was her first one and it would be on her face, which is a massive commitment, especially for your first tattoo. And he tried talking her out of it. But during this conversation, he reports that a gun fell out of Emmett's pocket, and it was at this point that he feared for his life, so he stopped trying to negotiate and just gave her the tattoo. On November 20th, she picked up her last paycheck from the Michael Kors store she worked at Perimeter Mall. Her coworkers were very concerned because she came in wearing, yet again, aviator sunglasses, and they could tell that her face looked bruised and swollen underneath them. Her appearance actually bothered her manager so much that he decided it was best to call the police, but she was gone before they arrived. And then on November 30th, 2017, just shortly before 4 a.m., cell phone records show that they took an Uber to Gwinnett Place Mall together. Now, this part confuses me just a little bit because every mall I've ever heard of closes around 10 p.m. I don't know if this is a Georgia thing, a South thing, or just the mall itself, but apparently the mall was open at 4 a.m. Now, not much is known about what all happened that morning at the mall, given the fact that the security cameras were shut off. They would have been very, very helpful in this case. However, police did figure out that Emmett obviously attacked her, which ended up leading to her death, and then he left her body in the back room of a vacant Subway restaurant in the food court. This Subway restaurant can be seen in the background of the food court shots in season 3 of Stranger Things, and it was rebranded as Hawkins Heroes, probably due to the gruesome nature of what happened there. It wasn't until a few weeks later, on December 21st, that a maintenance worker finally found her body. The maintenance worker was doing routine checks when he came across the locked back door to the Subway unit. He then went around to the front, climbed over the counter, and that's when he found Silling's body pretty much mummified. This video here is from one day before her body was found, walking past that exact Subway restaurant, and they had no idea what was just a few feet away from them. After the body was found, he reports that he did not smell anything, but there are quite a few people that have been interviewed since that said that they did smell a foul odor coming from the food court. When police finally arrived at the scene, a detective reported that the first thing he saw walking into that vacant Subway restaurant was blood and hair all over the floor. After just sitting in that back room for a few weeks, her body was so badly decomposed that upon initial inspection, police couldn't find any signs of trauma to her body because she was in that bad of a condition. Her fingers were essentially mummified, and her face was said to be barely recognizable, which is so sad. So it would take an entire autopsy before police would have any clue what happened to her. Although police didn't know what happened to her at this point without the full autopsy report being back, they already considered this a suspicious death, given the nature of the way they found her, all the blood and all of the hair around the crime scene, and just the fact that you don't typically find find bodies in the back room of subway restaurants and malls. Silling had no form of identification on her, no cell phone, no ID, not even a credit card, so they released this sketch to the public, and it was about 3 weeks later in January of 2018 that police were able to get in contact with Silling's family. Once the body was identified as 19-year-old Silling Man, they reached out to Emmett, just to chat. He, however, had been very busy at this point. He had already pawned her phone for $1,500, claiming that it was his, and just 2 days after her body was found, he ran off to New York to live with his mother. When police asked him when the last time he saw Silling was, he said that he saw her 2 weeks prior, which police knew was a lie because at that point she had already been dead for 3 weeks. They were obviously very suspicious of Emmett at this point, but when the autopsy results came back in March of 2018 and they were finally able to rule this death as a homicide, he became suspect number 1. The autopsy reported that she had 4 broken ribs, a mutilated and fractured finger on her right hand, which is believed to have been aggressively stomped on, a bruised nose, and a bruised lip. Police believe that all of the blood at the crime scene came from her finger. I don't really get that, considering that detective said his first impression when he walked in was how much blood and hair were all over the place. I don't really see a finger producing that amount of blood, but that's just what police believe. It was determined that her cause of death was by asphyxiation. They believe that Emmett sat on her chest, preventing her from breathing until she eventually died. After the autopsy report came back, police tried getting Emmett to come back to Georgia and talk to them, but he refused. He said that he would only speak to them on the phone. This didn't bother police too much because they figured they could wait him out while they worked on getting phone records and other tests completed to use against him. One of the tests being done was on a fingerprint that they found at the crime scene. Now, this fingerprint was made on a door frame in Silling's blood and eventually came back as a match to Emmett. In May, Emmett headed back to Georgia, and on June 14th of 2018, just a few weeks before Stranger Things Season 3 was released, Emmett was arrested from a family member's house in Lawrenceville, Georgia, being indicted on the charges of aggravated assault and felony murder. Later, additional charges were added, which included aggravated battery, malice murder, theft by taking, and theft by deception. These theft charges were added because of the fact that he stole her phone and sold it without her permission. During his initial interview, he denied even being in the food court that day and said he had absolutely nothing to do with Silling's murder. However, the judge ruled that the case would proceed to trial and that Emmett was to be held without bond at Gwinnett County Jail. Witnesses testified that Emmett had been beating Silling for the weeks leading up to her murder, and that on that Thanksgiving, they had heard a very aggressive fight between the two of them. An ex-girlfriend even said that one of the times she tried to escape from Emmett while he was beating her, he immediately grabbed her hair and yanked her backwards towards him. Other than that, there is very little information that I have found publicly about the trial. I don't know if it just hasn't been published yet, but it has been seemingly long enough that there would be articles about it. I just literally could not find them anywhere, so I'm assuming it is just not public information yet. With all of the evidence that they had against him though, including their cell phone records that placed them at the mall that day, the record of the Uber they took together to get there, his fingerprint found in her blood at the crime scene, and the fact that he stole her phone, sold it, and then ran off to New York right after her body was found, the police had a pretty good case against him. In early 2021, Emmett Davis Jr. finally pled guilty to the murder of 19-year-old Silling Man on November 30th, 2017. He was sentenced to 28 years to life in prison, and he won't be eligible for parole until 2046. Despite Emmett now being behind bars for Silling's murder, her family still doesn't feel like they have the closure that they need. In fact, the trial actually raised more questions for them, like how someone by themselves could have killed Silling and stashed her body in that restaurant. Police believe that she was killed in that location, but her family believes that someone else helped him and brought him there. Now, given the lack of security footage, it's probably never going to be determined what actually happened that day. And while it's good that Emmett did plead guilty and is now behind bars, because of this, her case is closed and will most likely never be opened, meaning Silling's family will never find the other person that they believe helped with this. They believe that Silling's case will never truly be solved. And that is it for today's video. As I said in the beginning, there's not a ton of information about this case, and I honestly think it's sad the lack of media coverage that a lot of these missing persons cases and murder investigations get. While obviously Emmett is to blame because he's the one who carried out this crime, I feel like the mall shares in a little bit of the blame. I mean, they shut off their security cameras, and I just find it mind-blowing that nobody found her for so long. I mean, how do you not find a dead body in a mall for 3 weeks? I just really don't understand. And on top of it, I think it's even crazier that so soon after this took place, the mall was leased out by Stranger Things, and they just completely redid the whole thing, including the crime scene, to film the show there. No hate to Stranger Things necessarily. I mean, that was my absolute favorite season, and I adore the mall scenes because of the aesthetic itself. But I think it is absolutely wild that just a few months after a murder took place, the same location became the set of a television show. Let me know down below what you guys think about this case. Do you think Emmett worked alone, or do you think someone helped him? And do you think the mall is slightly responsible for their negligence and their lack of care for the property? Be sure to leave me any case suggestions in the Google form link down below. My outro buddy has popped in to join me for a quick second. He's a little bit grumpy because I had to turn the AC off to film, and it's a little hot in here. But thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.